Does it feel like games are asking more out of you these days? And I'm not talking about money. You can always get more of that. I'm talking about the one thing we all have a finite amount of: time. Games are getting so long. So many RPGs take like 60 hours to complete just the main story without even touching any of the side quests. And they're great games, don't get me wrong, but they're just so long. Why is that? Why are developers and consumers so obsessed with games being long? Because games used to be short. If you knew what you were doing in an arcade, you could breeze through a game. Arcades made money when you died in a game and you had to pay up to keep playing. So if you just didn't die, then you could make it through no problem and on the cheap. Around the NES is when home gaming became a thing. You paid upfront for a cartridge and could play it as many times as you liked. Games were still difficult, so you were able to get your money's worth out of the purchase. But the fourth generation is where things get interesting. You start to see these games become mega popular not because of their mechanical challenge, but the quality of the writing. Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana. People were getting into these games for the dialogue, the world building, and the plot. The gameplay was enjoyable, of course, but the writing is what people remember. This is when game lengths really started to balloon. These 20 to 30 hour RPGs start to pop up and become not just something to blow through in a weekend, but a full-blown epic. Complete with ups and downs, twists and turns, it's like a movie you can play. I think this happened because developers really started to hit their stride in this generation. The NES feels like a prelude to the SNES in a way. So many iconic games on the Super Nintendo had previous entries on the NES, but the developers iterated in such smart ways for those sequels. They spent the entire third generation learning what made games good, only to be able to act on that and make some true masterpieces in the fourth. Consumers were drawn to these larger games. I found an advertisement from Toys R Us in the mid-90s with some game prices listed. I gotta say, it is kinda shocking to see the price of these and note that games basically cost the same. Technically, they're even cheaper with inflation, and that's not even taking into account how massive the budgets are for games these days. Like, look at that! Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 cost the same price as Mortal Kombat 1 did at release last year. Getting off topic there. Regardless, MK3, $70. Street Fighter Alpha 2, $70. I imagine Final Fantasy VI, or I guess 3 here in the West, wouldn't be that much more expensive at the time. Like, I seriously doubt it was $100 or whatever. Maybe this is just my bias against fighting games, but FF6 seems like such a better deal. I'm sure both of those other games are great, just maybe get them on sale. You could get at least 30 hours out of Final Fantasy VI. And if you're just a dumb kid who doesn't know what they're doing, you'll probably put 100 hours in just wandering around, doing nothing. If you're getting one game for Christmas, you're going to want to ask for the game you can get the most playtime out of. And hey, if you have a sibling, I'm sure you can get your playtime out of Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, but I feel like FF6 makes a better case for its value. I think so, at least. People still have that mindset. So many games will get negative reviews just because they're too short. Though maybe that was more so a problem a couple generations ago. I remember seeing people complain about shooters having like 7-hour campaigns and attacked on multiplayer that nobody cared about. Bulletstorm was a game I liked back in the day, but it was short. You could maybe get 8 to 9 hours if you just wanted to play through the story once. Imagine you're given $60 for your birthday, and you can buy only one game at GameStop with that money. You see Bulletstorm on the shelf, and right beside it, you see Skyrim. If you're a little kid and only get money like that twice a year, you're going to try to spend it efficiently. Skyrim is a no-brainer. I feel like publishers picked up on that fact. People preferred games that they could sink a ton of hours into, rather than something they could finish in a weekend. So games got big. turn-based RPGs used to really be the only games that would keep you hooked for like 30 hours. Now there's all these action-adventure games. Assassin's Creed, Red Dead Redemption 2, Elden Ring, games that you could easily sink 100 hours plus into. You could play one of those games for like a week without having to engage with the main plot at all. There's so much side content to distract you with. Just the value you get out of these games compared to games a couple generations ago is insane. Though I should point out, there is more to a game than its value. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a beefcake. I searched up the game on howlongtobeat.com and it lists out all the DLCs separately. So let's do some math and see how long it takes the average person to 100% complete this game. 147 hours for the main game, 22 hours for Dawn of Ragnarok, the big main DLC, 14 hours for the Siege of Paris, 18 hours for the Wrath of the Druids, and let's just say 6 hours for the rest, ignoring the Discovery Tour, which is a historical, informational side thing. Throw all those together and you got 207 hours. 207 hours to fully complete Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now don't get me wrong, I like me some Assassin's Creed. I 100%ed Assassin's Creed Origins early last year and it took me 64 hours. It was fun. I genuinely cannot imagine playing that game almost 3 times over to reach a 207 hour playtime. Past a certain point in these games, you mostly settle in mechanically. They stop introducing new stuff, and you're expected to master what you have. Like, they're not going to throw some insane new combat mechanic at you in hour 38. You're mostly locked in by hour 6 or so. I haven't played Valhalla, so I don't know how it drip feeds its content for sure, but it can't be that much different than Origins. I'd say you probably have all the base systems unlocked by hour 10 or so. And even then, if they wanted to be crazy and reveal some major gameplay system at hour 30, you still have 170 hours ahead of you. 170 hours of gameplay left with no crazy twists or turns mechanically. I can't imagine Valhalla has the gameplay variety to back up that 207 hour playtime. If you're not bored at hour 70, you'll definitely be feeling at least a little bit tuned out by hour 170. I was kinda starting to feel the burnout with Origins towards the end of my 64-hour playthrough. Valhalla seems like the work of a madman. Ubisoft was so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And that's not just a problem with average games. Even the best of the best can feel too long at points. Persona, Baldur's Gate, The Witcher 3, these are all critically acclaimed games. And they're so chunky, my god! Persona 5 Royal has a base game completion time of over 100 hours. Base game, not even including any side quests or extra stuff. It's a quality game. The combat is fun, the characters are enjoyable, and the plot is engaging, but man, it just kinda gets samey after a while. Maybe I just have beef with Persona in particular, but I can't make it through one of these games to save my life. I played like 60 hours of Persona 3 FES on the PS3 like 8 years ago and just stopped playing one day. I can't even remember why. I've restarted Persona 5 like 3 times, and quit every time. I don't know why. If I had to take a guess, it's just that the setting kinda drains me. Seeing the same city, the same school interiors, the same dialogue screen, it just wears on me after a while. And I fully acknowledge that I'm in personal opinion territory. I'm not going to say any of those aspects are bad, just that they don't work for me. But even if I did like Persona, even if I were to somehow get over that hump, that's still 100 plus hours to play through it. And it's not the only long game I have that I would like to play. There are literally dozens of games in my backlog that are probably over 60 hours long. Where the hell am I going to find the time to play those? And that's nothing to say of the games that keep coming out. Metaphor ReFantasio just released, and that seems super cool. I could see this being my first Persona-esque game that I finish. But it's 60 plus hours. And I'm a side quest guy, so my playtime would definitely reach up towards 100 hours. The new Yakuza game, the Persona 3 remake, the PC port of Shin Megami Tensei 5, Assassin's Creed Shadows on the horizon? I know I just went on and on about how bloated Valhalla is, but I'm kinda interested in Shadows if it's just like Valhalla, but in Japan. The world looks so much more interesting in that game. Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out within the year, and that's probably gonna be the biggest game ever created. It's gonna have the biggest budget, sell the most copies, and be the game people focus on for that generation. An unfathomable amount of effort is being poured into that game to make sure it's the biggest project gaming has ever seen. And I have to wonder, is all that necessary? Do you know how many new games Rockstar made for the PlayStation 2? 21. And how many for the PS4? 1. They made one new game that whole generation. I kinda just want them and developers as a whole to chill out. Don't feel the need to create these mega blockbusters where you have to top yourself every time. Sure, GTA 6 will be the biggest, most insane game ever created. But what about after that? What will GTA 7 look like? Or 8? You can't infinitely get bigger. There has to be a plateau at some point. I say, experiment more. Make smaller games and try out some weird shit. Then you'll have some interesting ideas for your next bigger game. Though I guess indies can fill that experimental niche. Who am I to tell Rockstar to chill out? Literally nobody is doing what they're doing. Not even the big movie studios are making moves like Rockstar is. Avengers Endgame made $2.8 billion in the box office. That was definitely the biggest Marvel release up until that point, and perhaps the biggest we'll ever see. Star Wars The Force Awakens made $2 billion, also probably the highest that franchise will ever see. Do you know how much money Rockstar made off of Grand Theft Auto 5? 8.6. 8.6 billion. More than Endgame and The Force Awakens combined. I have no doubt in my mind that GTA 6 will surpass even that. You know what? My bad, Rockstar. You do you. You keep making the biggest, most expensive game ever created. Everyone else, though, maybe just stop for a bit. Stop making games for like 2 years. Let me catch up on my backlog. Bye!